Welcome back, folks. College Baseball Central and the weekend rotation. We're here. We're back. We're getting into this. We do have the SEC preview show for you here. Have you guys ever been wanting to watch a Saturday game day show like you do for college football, but for baseball? We're in season 4, folks. We've been doing this every Saturday during season. We join you live here. We show you guys all the highlights. We talk about all the games we go through. We break down all that's going on in the world of college baseball. We love doing it. We want you guys to join us live. We thank all our viewers who have been joining us over the past 3 seasons. Like I said, we're starting up season 4 now here. It's crazy. Today I'm joined by Noah Darling and Jake McKeever. Noah, how we doing, man?
Pretty swell, Mark, other than waking up with a headache, but that comes with getting warm. We're just getting loose this fall. Been a busy fall across the country, and excited to get rolling with these previews. And Mark, it's always a treat to see your face.
Man, it's so good to be back. It's great to be back. Folks, if you haven't seen, we do a lot of other stuff also. So we've got people in the ACC, we got people in the SEC this year. We've got people all over the country. We're bringing you head coach interviews. We're bringing you player interviews. We're going out there. We're talking to assistant coaches. We're really just going down and breaking down a lot of college baseball for you. Come on, see us over at College Baseball Central. We're on Twitter. We're on X. We're on all the things. We got the YouTube channel. Jake, speaking of SEC, this is your conference this year, man. How we doing today?
I'm excited. So we've done two of the just me sitting in my room talking alone on Southern Fried Baseball. So it's going to be good to kind of hear other people talk about the SEC as I've just kind of been blabbering to myself for these first 2 weeks.
Just screaming into the void, Jake. But it's been great. For those who haven't caught it yet, Southern Fried Baseball. It's terrific. It's all about SEC baseball. We're breaking down every week. Jake's going through team by team. He's going to discuss all these. But we're going to give you our preview here. This is a breakdown we do every single season. We go through and we rank the teams in each of the major conferences, and we go backwards. So SEC, 16 teams now. We're going to go 16 through 1. We're going to go through each one of these teams, talk a little bit about them, and be ready to be just discussing college baseball. And we're back. We're so back. Thanks, Joe. Cannot wait for this. Let's get after it here. Noah, number 16, Missouri. There's a team. We love Kirk Jackson. We think that he's going to be a good fit there. He's building something. They're new. They're on the cusp still.
Yeah, it's kind of a slow rebuild for Missouri as expected. This is a team that you talk about all the great teams in the SEC, and there's only two that haven't been to a super regional since 2021. It's Missouri and it's Vanderbilt, and as well as Mississippi State, of course. But you talk about Missouri kind of being
they win. They've been to a super regional.
Incorrect.
Not since 2021.
I thought you said since 2022. You got to work on the lisp, no?
Yeah, it's my accent. It's all the Southern Fried Baseball I've been watching. But this Missouri program is one that you know exactly what you're going to get with this Missouri team. But it's a slow rebuild, bringing in kind of an interesting transfer class. Pierre Seals from Memphis. That's where Kerrick Jackson is from, of course. Jalen Merchant, James Vaughn are going to be interesting arms. Talking about James Vaughn, kind of a nerd. I really like smart baseball players. Started at Duke, ended up at Columbia. I know Jake has a soft spot for the Ivy League as well. This is a Missouri team that returns Jackson Lovich. Danny Corona, a lot of people remember him from Wake Forest on that great team that went toe-to-toe with LSU. And Brock Daniels kind of leading the way offensively for Missouri. That group makes kind of an interesting core, but there's a reason that Missouri is ranked where they are, and I think we have them appropriately ranked, as we can count on almost annually until, like you said, I think Kerrick Jackson can get this rolling, but again, a very slow rebuild in Como.
Do you think they're going to hit better this season? Because that was kind of their Achilles heel last year, was they hit, I think, down in the 220s in SEC play.
I think they go this way, right?
Kerrick Jackson was a pitcher in college, so it kind of makes sense. Yeah. But the hitting's just so struggling for him.
I think they go better on the hitting this year, and I think they kind of take a step back on pitching. I think that they're going to have to try to find some innings from some guys. That's how I feel on this one.
Pitching was kind of underrated last year for this team. That was really the only thing that they were half decent at. But yeah, Kerrick Jackson, slow rebuild, but I think we all have been spot on with him so far. I'd like to see them take the next step, but it's going to be very, very tough.
Yeah, I'm a big fan also of Caden Nicoletto, the Aussie. I think that they're bringing in some guys. I think that they're trying to build this program up, and I really like what he's doing. A lot of young guys trying to figure this thing out and give them lots of innings. So maybe in a year from now, this team is looking to be one of those competitive teams in the SEC. Number 15, Jake, Ole Miss. Man, this is a team. I don't know if there's a hotter seat in the country right now than this Ole Miss team, and they've got to figure things out this season. They've really got to turn things around. That losing season last year was not what this fan base had hoped. they really had big hopes for this team. They're doing it with a lot of new faces.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really, really bad 12 months for the Ole Miss Rebels. I mean, they had that new stadium that everybody got excited. Then NIL comes in, and they kind of are like, okay, let's take a step back, chill out a little bit. I don't think there's a more fair weather fan base in the country when it comes to spending NIL money around sports. Their football team is doing tremendous. Their basketball team with Chris Beard is doing tremendous, which kind of leaves baseball as that third child that's not getting a ton of money. And that really kind of shows with some of the recruits that they brought in. I mean, Ole Miss, 10 years ago, really was a premier place to go and play baseball. They recruited at Mississippi State levels, and now they just don't. And I don't know if it's because of the hot seat that always seems to be around Bianco despite winning a national championship. Is it an NIL buy-in kind of thing? Is it a facilities kind of thing? But this Ole Miss team is not a talented bunch at all. I mean, you get fan favorite Luke Hill back for another season. Kind of an underrated high school class. But I think that this Ole Miss team is really, really going to struggle. And I think the only saving grace is, that they're going to improve because they're going to be in Hoover this year.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, they've got some guys coming back. Like you mentioned, Luke Hill, Will Furness, Riley Maddox, Campbell Smithwick. Does Hunter Elliott, does he return to any sort of form? Because that could be a big key to this team and having any success. Noah, how's your feelings on this Ole Miss team?
I'm going to go ahead and slightly disagree with Jake. I actually kind of like this Ole Miss team. I think they're a little bit fun. You talked about Luke Hill coming back. I don't know about him being a fan favorite. I would say maybe the opposite of that. But 3 top 100 transfers coming in according to 64 Analytics. You get Isaac Humphrey from Louisville, Ryan Moorman from Illinois, and Mitchell Sanford coming in from New Orleans. There's some.
I should clarify that they're all over 50 according to D1. So you said 100, but it's in that 50 to 100 range.
I quoted 64 Analytics. I don't have the exact numbers for you, Jake, but I'd be happy to take the stand with Ole Miss on another day with you. But obviously, we know where Ole Miss is going to be, and I think we're all, to an extent, surprised that Mike Bianco's still around. But when you win a national championship, you get a certain amount of leeway that maybe you're uncomfortable with because you expect to just do it again really quickly. But this is a tough sport to win in, and I think Jake has a point with NIL and the changing landscape. You got to save money for players that might cancel some of the excitement around a program. But another player, Colin Reuter, coming in from BYU. I think there's a little bit of excitement with this Ole Miss team. You talk about guys who, when you look at this roster, you think, am I looking at a 2024 roster or a 2022 roster? Because you see Mason Nichols and Hunter Elliott. What happened to Hunter Elliott? He's back. You could have told me he was in year 3 of a minor league career, but he's back this year, allegedly.
I think he's going to get 2 medical red shirts as well if he applies for them. We can get a Cam Rising situation with him.
Yeah, he's really turning into like a Perry Ellis on the diamond. If Hunter Elliott can be what Hunter Elliott once was, then we're going to be talking about a great Ole Miss team. But that's a huge if when you talk about a guy coming off of injuries.
Yeah, 2, because I think he had a complication when he was rehabbing.
Yes, yeah. I think he came back for 1 game.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, but he traveled. He traveled with in 23 to the A&M series, and he wore pants and everything on Friday. And then Saturday, he switched into sweats. So I think that's kind of when he tweaked something. And again, he didn't pitch in the game. It was just like a very subtle thing.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, we know that he could be really good and he could help this team out a lot, and he could be what Bianco needs to get this team rolling. Again, we're talking about teams here that we're saying that are 15th in the SEC. They're still probably top 50 teams in the country. We're just going to have to see what happens there. Cam Rising has 4 years of eligibility left to do in baseball. That's true. That's just sad. Too bad his hands never work. Let's move on to number 14, Alabama. Noah, this Alabama team, they've had a lot of off-field stuff going on the last few years, but baseball-wise, they've been pretty good.
Yeah, this is a team that you can really bet on to make a little bit of a splash as the season goes on.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I guess I no longer know things when I walk up to the casino. I just have a hunch. But this is a fun Alabama team the last few years with Rob Vaughn coming in, but we can see kind of the shine wearing off of this team. They're so hard to read because you look at some of the other outlets, how they kind of almost prop them up throughout the year. I don't know what the secret is there, but they end up either squeaking into the tournament or always sitting on the bubble, but then they're also in the hosting conversation at the same time. It's very strange. But we've heard Jake go crazy about Justin LeBron the last week or so. I think that's going to be one of his, for lack of a better word, darlings this year. But then I think they bring in a really intriguing transfer class with Brady Neal coming in from LSU, which when you bring in an LSU player, that's obviously a little zest that you can always count on. But he's a player that hasn't quite lived up to his potential. We'd love to see him pop there. Really highly ranked according to our friends at 64 Analytics. I'm sure Jake's sources have a different ranking on him. But Jason Torres, Aiden Finateri, Brennan Norton, also all top 100 guys. So I think there's, again, a little bit of a reason to be excited. We've seen Alabama succeed with a few transfers. Maybe they can do it again.
They've lost a lot of pitching, though. And Jake, this team, it needs to be able to compete on the mound. And we know Justin LeBron, right? He's going to be a superstar. He's the Cadillac of this team. What else? Where else do they go?
Well, I mean, we did do a deep dive on Alabama. That was the first one. So go into our past lives, and it'll be in there. I mean, they are replacing a ton off of a team last year that really kind of overachieved. No, you got to remember, they beat Tennessee early in the season, and then they beat South Carolina early in the season too. So they had some tremendous wins down the stretch. Obviously, they kind of faltered. Justin LeBron, I think, has the potential to be an all-SEC shortstop. I think it's going to come down to him and Aloy over at Arkansas. They bring back Will Hodo, and that's really about it. Everybody else is going to be new guys that come in, Rob Vaughn guys in that system. The Brady Neal one, I think, is going to be really, really underrated because a lot of the LSU transfers that kind of came out of that talented 22 class seemed like they were almost, the island of misfit toys. And a few of the coaches that I talked to around Brady Neal said that that's not the case at all. I mean, there was a few ACC schools that really coveted him hard, said that they saw a deficiency in his swing and thought that they could tweak something. And from the fall camps, it seems like that thing has kind of been working as they do have Brady Neal in that 4-hole, and he provides a tremendous amount of power there. The pitching, I think the pitching is going to be very, very careful to watch because they have 3 guys that can pitch at an SEC level, and they're all going to be their 3 starters, and they're going to need those guys to go 5, 6, 7 innings just about every weekend if they want to have a chance to win these. Because outside of that, I mean, their bullpen really, really drops off. They're still SEC caliber guys, but Finateri at the top end of that rotation actually kind of puts them more in the middle ground of SEC pitchers, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just new, right? Untested, unproven. They're going to have to figure some stuff out, and they're really pretty thin when you're talking about a bullpen and overall pitching staff as far as that talent goes. But, hey, there's been bigger surprises to happen in the SEC, and when you're bringing in this talented group, you never know what they're going to perform like when it comes down to Saturday mornings. All right.
We were low on them last year, too, as well. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Totally wrong.
Yeah. Number 13, Mississippi State. Jake, tell us a little bit about this team. We know that they had this old guard team. They've kind of done a full shift. They have a few returning talent. They lost some pitching. This team has to be better, and they were great last year. They way overperformed from where people thought that they would be. Can this team have that kind of magic again?
Yeah, this is one where I think we were kind of split because if our rankings are average between a few of our staffs, 2 of our staff had them very, very low, and 2 of them me and AJ both had them very, very high. The pitching was going to get Lemonis fired last year. If he didn't go and get a premier pitching coach, everything around that program pointed to him being fired. Good news for Mississippi State fans because Chris Lemonis is one of the best coaches in the SEC. He really did find his pitching coaches, stealing one from South Carolina, and that really was where this team kind of turned the corner. And I think another year with that pitching coach is going to do tremendous things for Mississippi State because we know that they're always going to hit. They return Hunter Hines. They're going to be at the top of the SEC hitting. As long as the pitching is decent enough and kind of gets them into that 4, 5, 6 runs a game range, they're going to win a ton of games in the SEC. And while we have them this low, they really weren't that far from being in the hosting conversation. I thought there were a lot of people in Starkville that felt that they should have hosted. I think that Mississippi State's going to be one of those teams that pleasantly surprises a ton of people, and they're going to be an exciting team to watch just because of how much they seem to mash the ball.
Yeah, they were right on that cusp of hosting. I think that if they had done a little bit better in the SEC tournament, that we would have been talking about them versus the Georgias of the world. But I was really excited for that Mississippi State team to get going, and last year I picked Hunter Hines to be my SEC breakout player. He was close. He was on the cusp. He had a really good season. Good to see him coming back after not getting drafted where he wanted to. Carson Ligon, Ace Reese. This team has some talent. Noah, when you look at this team, they have the makings of a team that could possibly host, or they could be in the bottom dwelling of the SEC.
Yeah, it was kind of an unfortunate narrative for this team last year where at the beginning of the season you thought, oh, well, here's the Lemonis goodbye tour. And then they got hot. And then at the end of the year, they kind of lose a lot of the pieces that got them to that point. Normally in that situation, you see, a team's starting to come together, a bunch of young guys, In this case, it was the old guys who kind of late bloomed. So a weird transition for Mississippi State, and I think, like Jake alluded to, very hard for us to kind of rank that before we see those new pieces come together. I know that there's a lot of anticipation around Ace Reese, like you just mentioned, Mark, but Stone Simmons back from injuries, along with Ross Highfill, and of course Hunter Hines. There's some excitement there, but again, I have no idea how to assess this Mississippi State team because, like Jake said, we're on our way out and we're thinking new head coach coming, and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, this pitching staff is good, the bats are starting to connect, and then all of a sudden they're all gone. How do we rebuild while still having Hunter Hines, who we thought was the best player on this team last year, and then you saw Dakota Jordan take that next step. So it's going to be a very interesting year in Starkville. Again, as we keep saying, I really have no idea how to evaluate this team right now.
Yeah,
They need to get off to a hot start. I think that's been the one thing under Lamona's post-national championship is they always kind of seem to, get shot in a midweek super early. This is a team that I think really needs to come out hot. They need to dominate early in SEC play because that really kind of was the story of them last year too. Is it took us a while to kind of think that Mississippi State was good because remember they lost to A&M early, they lost to a few other teams early, and then when they got into that April range, they were beating the doors off everybody. But it felt like it was almost a little bit too little, too late for them, and that ended up. I think the committee kind of ended up seeing that too as well.
Yeah, I think the bias of early on caused them to not host, which is such a weird dynamic when you think about North Carolina a few years ago, who got hot at the right time and they were a national seed. Is just kind of unfortunate.
Or A&M lost to Penn, and then they were top 5 in the country. So it's weird you kind of marry certain things into certain teams. But yeah, that did because I would have rather played Georgia than Mississippi State last year. Mississippi State was.
I agree. That's what I think that was the between that two. Those two
I mean, Virginia, that was tougher than their super regional matchup, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you have an upset in the other regional, and then you get to play at home instead of going to Fayetteville.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. Let's move on to our next team here. Number 12, South Carolina. This was a team that we had all over the rankings between all of our people that were choosing these. And this is a team that could really have the talent to be right where they need to be and be near the top of this conference. But they also continually underperform. They continually have injury issues. They continue to have all these things come up. Noah, South Carolina, tell me a little bit about what you think of this year's team, and can they finally put it together and be healthy for a whole season?
I think they're appropriately lumped in with Mississippi State here in the sense that we can't tell until Paul Mainieri gets rolling, which is such a weird hire that we're talking about in 2024. But you see South Carolina fans are booking their trips to Omaha already. I don't see it with this team. Obviously, you have Ethan Petrie back, which was huge. I know that there were some whispers about him maybe looking elsewhere when Kingston was on his way out the door, but they retained him. A lot of interesting pieces. I think they brought in another interesting portal class, but again, nobody too exciting. I'm sure Jake will dog on him a little bit. Dalton Mashore from St. Mary's and Henry Kasmer from Ohio State in the top 100 according to 64 Analytics.
And Max Coffer from A&M.
There you go.
There it is.
But this class or this team is going to be defined by their transition of coaching staff, and it's just an interesting transition. There was kind of a narrative that South Carolina can go get anybody because they're a national power, and I think we saw that maybe they aren't as highly ranked as maybe they once were. Can Paul Mainieri fix that? I don't think he's a head coach for more than, can we estimate, 5 years? He's going to have to 2 years for Jake. Okay, I would imagine that'd be a massive failure.
Transition head coach.
But who's he transitioning to? Is it Monty Lee? We don't. What
yes, I don't know why they didn't give the job to Monty Lee. Like it feels like Paul Mainieri's like an Aramitist coach right now, and Monty Lee's going to be the one out recruiting because, I mean, from what I heard from people around LSU, Paul Mainieri didn't even want to drive down to New Orleans to go recruit him. He's going to do it all over the Carolinas. It's definitely Monty Lee's team. Like I don't know why we're playing this weird game where he gets to learn from like one of the greats.
It kind of feels like the presidential election just now where it's like, all right, we got these two geriatrics. Who are the VPs? Because there's a chance that person is president.
It's a pretty good analogy. Like this should it's Monty. It's going to be Monty Lee in years. Like barring Paul Mainieri winning a national championship or getting close, it definitely feels like. I mean, the South Carolina fan base is one of the most rabid ones too. Like they're gonna be calling for Monty Lee the second they lose an SEC series this year.
Is Paul Mainieri prepared for the South Carolina burner Twitter? I don't think so.
Here's Here's the thing I look at
It's
with this
brutal.
team. I look at this South Carolina team though, Jake, and Eli Jersenbach. He can come back, right? He might be back. He might be fully back if he's healthy. That really does give them a front end starter. But they have a lot of other guys that they're trying to figure out who their starters are going to be, right? They return a lot of innings, no doubt. Dylan Askew, Roman Kimbrell, these guys are coming back, but there are a lot of question marks on the pitching side. They have the offense. Ethan Petry's a dude. I mean, he's going to be performing there. Kennedy Jones, another dude. But can this team perform at the high end of the SEC level?
And they were so close so many times last year. I mean, think about how many times they loaded the bases with no outs and had 3 guys strike out. Like they were the kings of taking walks. They got on base a ton, but they seemed to never kind of get them in. I mean, this is a team that I'm super, super low on just because I really don't believe in Pulmonary, but they could be very, very close to top 15 team. If the stuff kind of clicks for them a little bit, if they get innings out of people that they think that they can get innings out of, Talamatch LaCroix continues to kind of take step forwards at third base as he moved over from catcher last year. He's another guy that I think you can kind of watch out for to break out for the South Carolina team. They have the talent to be in that top 15 range. I think that they just have a ton of deficiencies and really kind of just shoot themselves in the foot too many times.
Yeah, we're just going to have to see this one to play out. I think this team could be anywhere, like you said. It could be a top 15 team all the way down to where we're not even talking about them making the tournament. This team could be all over the board. It would be a shame not to see Ethan Petry get some postseason run. Number 11, Auburn. Now, in the Butch Thompson era, he has never had back-to-back seasons where he misses the tournament. So obviously, we got to make a turn here, right? I mean, their non-conference record was terrific at 21-4, and then they just could not win any games in the SEC. It just really was a struggle for them. Jake, I know a lot of transfers are coming in on this team, and they're trying to rebuild, and Butch Thompson's got something going. Is this the year where we maybe start talking, hey, this is another Omaha run from an Auburn team?
So you say that, but they've never finished third or above in the SEC West. And granted, the divisions went away, so never finished in the top of the SEC West, even when they were going to Omaha. There's a lot to like about this Auburn team. They had just about everything that can go wrong for them. I mean, Julian, I think, just like forgot to hit the baseball, and he was some guy that they expected to kind of be a premier talent. Cooper McMurray battled injuries too, as it was really kind of him and Ike Irish, and then it was just the Ike Irish show. I think Auburn's luck turns around this year. Ike Irish, get another year of him. He's going to be a guy that's going to be talked about in the SEC Player of the Year conversation, in my opinion. I think he's the most talented player returning in the SEC, which is very, very high accolades I think 4 of the 5 guys are going to go in the top 10. They're going to come from the SEC. I think Ike Irish is the most talented. Plainsman's Park's doing some great renovations. I think the fans are going to be excited. And I really trust Butch Thompson. He wins with less like nobody else in the country. And he started to kind of get some talent around Auburn. And I think that this is kind of the whirlwind of those College World Series teams kind of coming to fruition. I think that this is probably one of the more talented teams Butch Thompson has fielded at Auburn.
Yeah, no, I look at this team. Bristol Carter coming in from ECU, Mason Koch coming in from Creighton, Cade Fisher from Florida. I mean, you're talking about bringing in some really talented guys. And what are we looking at here with Auburn? I mean, they're bringing in a lot of guys with some remaining talent. Irish, we've talked about. Can this Auburn team be what we think it could be?
Absolutely, they can be. You talk about Butch Thompson heading, if you cancel out last year, Butch Thompson has almost been a beacon of consistency. Jake says, not finishing in the top 3 of the SEC West. How about finishing in the top 3 of the country when it matters, when you're in Omaha?
I mean, they love to just go and beat an ACC team that's like riding really high in their own regional. Like they did it to Georgia Tech.
Even a Pac-12 team.
Ouch. I was there, and that Auburn team.
That was in supers. That's super regionals.
That was a super regional game. It was great. It was they were all 1-run ball games. It was terrific.
But you guys touched on some of the big names already. Obviously, Ike Irish has been a tremendous player. It feels like he's been there forever, but that's what happens when you're an immediate impact freshman. Bringing in Mark talks about that transfer class. Cade Fisher, the number 1 player in the class according to 64 Analytics. Lucas Steele from Samford, Sam Dutton from LSU. Those are all top 35 guys. And then Mason Cook from Creighton is a player that I really, really enjoyed watching. I have no idea what his role is going to be in this Auburn rotation or depth piece, bullpen. But that Creighton used him as a setup man / closer, and he was electric. One of those guys that comes and gets 3 outs and fires the whole team up. That's kind of an immeasurable impact kind of guy in a close game, keeping everybody dialed in. Maybe he's a starter in the future. I heard that when he transferred out, he wanted to be a starter. We don't know what his role is going to be, but I cannot wait to watch him in whatever role that is because he's an electric player, and I'm glad he's going to be getting some more eyes on him because he's going to be in some clips. So I promise. Write that down. Mason Cook is going to be one of those guys where it's like, ooh, look at this electric player Auburn has. Well, he was even more electric at Creighton.
One more guy I want you guys to keep an eye on this year is freshman Connor Gatwood, 6'5", and he's throwing 98 miles an hour. I don't know what his role is exactly going to be at Auburn this year, but he's a guy that could really help them, even if he's a bullpen guy coming out there and throwing that 98-mile-an-hour fastball. We'll see. There's a lot of pieces here in Auburn, and I know Butch Thompson's going to put this team together. Number 10, Kentucky. A little low on Kentucky for the season they had last year, but it's a lot of new faces, a lot of changing of the guard here. They do bring in Tyler Bell, who was the highest-rated draft prospect. He got drafted 66. He's the highest-rated to come to the college levels, and that speaks a lot about this staff. Mingione very good at retaining players and keeping guys and building, a good clubhouse. But Noah, there's a lot they have to replace from last year's team that made that Omaha run.
Yeah, comparing them to Mississippi State, a team that peaked late versus a team like Kentucky with Mingione and what he's been able to do there was build up, and then peak, and then now we're seeing the rebuild. So I think that we appropriately have Kentucky ranked here, even though when you see 22-8 a year ago, you think, oh, top 5 team in the SEC. Maybe there's a little bit of a slip there, but that transfer class, it isn't really top heavy, but it's really, really deep. You bring in guys from Columbia, Kansas State, Illinois State, San Diego State, South Dakota State, just decent winning programs. Cole Hage from Columbia, another one of those smart guys that I like. Mark, I think we knew going in that Mingione wasn't a guy that we knew a tremendous amount about until we sat down and listened to him talk in Omaha. And we knew this is going to be our Link Jarrett guy, and we were hand up like this is going to be it. And it was. He delivered perfectly. So I have full faith in his ability to rebuild a program, and even then the rebuild isn't that crazy when you're able to do what he did last year. And he was recruiting in Omaha. Them and Kentucky had a little bit of or them and Georgia had a thing back and forth where who's going to be getting the next guy out of the portal. And it was just tremendous to watch. And this is a program that credits AJ. He was big on them last year. I don't know where he stands on them this year, but definitely moving in the right direction. But this is a key, obviously, year for that program.
Yeah, and again, Mingione, sitting down with him in Omaha, and I was just like blown away. I was like, this is the guy. This is who you want to lead this is who you want to lead your ship. This is your captain. I was very surprised, and the guy is genuine. He cares about baseball. He cares about his team. I think that he's not going away anytime soon. If you're a Kentucky fan, you pray you can keep him for a very, very long time. Jake, another guy that brought in also Adam Hackman, guy that never really got going for Arkansas, but could be another piece for this team.
Yeah, they're kind of a weird team though, because like you said, they finished top 5 in the SEC. They had a few guys transfer out. They had a ton of guys just kind of run out of eligibility, like Mitchell Daly. It feels like that's kind of the guys that they went and got in the transfer portal again, or Mingione guys again. Are they going to click at the same SEC rate that a lot of those guys click last year? I think that's going to be the big question mark with this team. And I think ultimately that's why I was kind of hesitant to leave that in that top 1. There is a big, big talent gap between them and the top class of the SEC teams. And it's going to be one thing that is going to have to be addressed going forward as Kentucky kind of tries to work itself into the upper echelons, because they have, in my opinion, a top 5 coach in the country. He's going to be able to recruit his guys. And the Kentucky fans, you can sleep well at night knowing. I know that there's a ton of schools that called on him for their head coach vacancies. There was a few schools that they're like, hey, if our coach leaves, would you want to come? And everything said, no, I'm going to stay here. I belong in Lexington, Kentucky. So I don't see him leaving in the next 5 years or anything like that. He's a program builder, kind of like a Tim Corbin at Vanderbilt. So some years he's going to be up there at the top. Some years he's going to be kind of in that mid-ground and coach his team up. I think that this is going to be one of those mid-ground years where he maximizes the talent that he has on that field. It just doesn't feel like they're as talented of a bunch as some of the teams above them, which is kind of weird as the evolution of Kentucky has kind of gone. Because when we first started the show, they were near the bottom. They were in that Missouri territory. And now we're talking about them in the same breath as those LSU, Tennessees, those type of schools. So when you say that they're not as talented as those, that's what I'm comparing it to, is those upper echelon of teams.
Yeah, and they're right there. I mean, it's gonna have to play itself out. And any of these 16 SEC teams can really go for a run and be good. There's enough talent in this conference to do that. In Kentucky, they really only returned Devin Burks and James McCoy. The rest of it's going to be just a brand new lineup. So we're going to have to see from there. All right. Chinook seeds, folks. If you have not tried Chinook seeds, you are missing out. They are some of the best sunflower seeds on the market right now. So many unique flavors that are terrific. If you use our code CBC, you get 10% off your order. Go out, buy yourself a mixed case. They have them out there. Go buy it. You can find out and figure out what flavor you like. Maybe you like a bunch of flavors like me. I have a whole bunch in my house, and I love giving them out to folks. CBC gets you 10% off any order. Go get yourself some Chinook seeds, best seeds in the business.
Mark, I got a big case of seeds and brought it to the office, and they were gone in about 10 minutes, and now there's like a seed revolution happening in there. Unfortunately, that brings in some other brands, so we got to get Chinook maybe more up here in the Midwest. I don't think you have any of it out there, Mark.
I do.
But they're getting there. Oh,
yeah,
you do.
We do have them out here. So I've been pushing hard for these stores to go get them out there because they're so good. And there's actually a store out next to me that actually started buying Chinook seeds and putting them in the store because I started buying them up. They're really a top tier seed. Very little additives put in there. It's mostly just great stuff. Not a ton of salt. You guys got to try these seeds. They're terrific. And I know when we walk around Omaha and we were giving out all those seeds last year, we didn't have nearly enough to give out. People were just coming and grabbing all the bags that they could grab. It was instant. So we love Chinook seeds, and you guys got to go out there and get them. Code CBC, get that 10% off that next order. Let's move on to another team. Number 9, Oklahoma. Right in the middle of the pack here, right? We don't really know how to feel about this team. We know that Skip's a great coach. We think that he's got some talent. There's a lot of guys returning. It was a youngish team last year, and now they have a lot of those guys returning here. Jake, tell me a little about this team and what you like. And I know you're going to talk about some of these guys that came in also.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, 40-21 in the Big 12. They won the Big 12 for the first time ever. I actually got to see them dogpile. It was one of the better moments of my season last year as they swept Baylor up there. I mean, Skip Johnson is a truly underrated coach in the sport. He's another one of those guys where he's not getting the most talent in his area, as a lot of those Dallas kids tend to go south. But he maximizes it. He goes and gets his guys. They bunt at an insane rate. They steal bases at an insane rate. They hit and run a ton. They are going to be replacing a few stalwarts that were there a long time. A few program guys, stragglers off that team that went and finished second in the whole country when they lost Ole Miss in that championship game. Easton Carmichael is going to be that guy that you kind of circle in that lineup. He's a mainstay. He's probably going to be one of the all SEC teams. He's that good of a player. I actually have them higher than Texas. I know that Texas has Schloss, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. I think that they have a little bit more talent going forward with Jackson Wiltz. Scott Mulder's another guy that I think that you really want to try and circle in that lineup. Dason Harris, kind of going to be that new brand of OU fast, of chaos. And I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people in the SEC. I think they're going to surprise a lot of opposing fans that travel into Norman too, as I think they're in the middle of a stadium funding project. So hopefully they can kind of get that part of it up to SEC standard, is because everything else about this team feels SEC ready except for that field.
Listen, they also brought in Cam Johnson, who has the ability to be a Friday night guy in the SEC. He hasn't really shown it with the control issues. But Skip is the pitcher whisperer, right? Like, this guy can get the most out of his pitching staff. Cam Johnson probably going to the best spot for him. Is Oklahoma on the rise still, especially coming to the SEC for the first year?
Absolutely. And I think that when we look at 3 of the kind of juiciest names in the SEC coaching-wise, Johnson, you got to bet on the Johnson. Don't Google that. But Skip, Wes, and Jay, of course. But with Oklahoma, I really like what they're able to do on the mound. Of course, you talk about Johnson coming in. That's a huge potential guy. Kind of reminds me of Hunter Elliott at Ole Miss. Can we click the right pieces? And that's really going to raise the team's potential. But I like the Witherspoon twins a lot. You talk about Malachi and Kyson. Throw like 100 miles an hour. They're going to scare some teams. They just have to worry about control. They really haven't been there quite yet. But talk about pure potential guys. You get the Witherspoons and Johnson. That is an elite 3. Not for sure that they're all going to start. I think Kyson and Malachi have been used kind of out of the bullpen as they mature a little bit, but they're juniors. It's time. pure potential guys there. And then Jackson Willits has become a mainstay in that program. And there's another Willits on the way. The Willits family has embraced Oklahoma. And as Jake says, that stadium quite isn't up to par, but I actually thought it was kind of fun. I thought it was a nice little intimate setting. Brutally hot when it gets warm. I don't know what it was about how just wide open there, no shade. And then I also sat there in a storm, but I actually kind of like it.
I do want to comment on Welts because he really has had to earn that short spot. I mean, they brought in Anthony McKenzie over from Sam Houston. They've had a few guys that they've tried to rotate in. It feels like if he's at some of the other programs in the SEC, he transfers out and tries to go find a new start. I think that's a credit to what Johnson is building in Norman, that somebody like him waits his turn, he's fine waiting his turn, and is going to start for a team that's probably going to push for the SEC this year.
Yeah, I really like what Skip's built there. And in this program, I think being in the SEC is even going to help it a little bit, even coming from the Big 12, recruiting-wise and getting some of these guys in, and especially if they get that stadium and the facilities built up. Number 8, Vanderbilt. Lot of talent there, especially on the offensive side, Jake, and some struggles last year. They didn't really perform in the SEC play. My question, they have a lot of pitching question marks, but this team does have enough talent to be right here in the middle of the pack.
I'm going to disagree. I am very, very low on this Vanderbilt team going forward. I know that last year a ton of us kind of ranked them in the top 10. It's like, trust Corbin. They replaced everybody on that staff except for Tim Corbin for the first time in 7 years. They are archaic in how they use NIL and the transfer portal, as they really kind of tend to get guys that you would assume would be at Vanderbilt already, like somebody like an RJ from Duke a few years ago. This is kind of the first year that I think that they really kind of attacked the portal. They were a terrible, terrible SEC hitting team. I think Aria Gerson, she had a great stat that all of the top teams in the SEC rank in the top half of home runs. Vanderbilt was dead last in that category, and that really was kind of their Achilles heel. Is they play somebody and they'd have to get 3-4 hits to get somebody home against premier SEC pitching like a Hagen Smith. They couldn't do it, whereas some of these SEC teams could always run into home runs. Tim Corbin kind of addressed that a little bit with the guys that they brought into the portal, but it's going to be a very, very difficult season in Nashville, and it's going to be one where Tim Corbin, I think, has to make some adjustments. I think there are adjustments that he makes, but, I mean, it's just a weird time in Nashville. I know Camden Cozell likely wasn't going to start for them this year, or he was at least going to be in, kind of a competition. Somebody like that transfers out to go to Arkansas. I think that speaks a lot about the kind of guys that they're recruiting. I think they kind of need to get back to the basics a little bit with their recruiting and recruit more Tim Corbin guys and not guys that Tim Corbin thinks can win in the SEC. I think that's kind of where their deficiency is right now.
I mean, yeah, RJ Austin's still there, Noah. Chris Maldonado is going to get some time. Riley Nelson bringing in as a JC transfer. And they got one of the best freshmen in the country in Brody Johnston, who's a just gigantic human being. He's going to play third base for them. I think the offense is going to be a little bit better than they were a year ago as far as production and home runs.
I mean, they have to be. Like, they were terrible.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew Polk and Jaden Davis are back as well. And those are two guys who hit 5 homers each. But, again, I think the long ball's overrated. This is a Vanderbilt team that has kind of lost their identity the last few years, and I think Jake kind of alluded to it, just the way that NIL has moved and the way that Vanderbilt just kind of is. And I know that for a long time it was, Vanderbilt's abusing the roster and they're able to get extra scholarships, but I think that Vandy is kind of in an awkward position when it comes to NIL. You talk about the sweater vest fan base, and the academic standards of a school just don't really allow for you to go out and just spend. You have to worry about other factors as well. But Mike Mancini, Cody Bowker coming in, both top 65 guys according to 64 Analytics. But I understand the hesitancy with Vanderbilt. I'm still kind of in the trust Corbin, but I am starting to waver on that. Talking about the new. It's
going to be a new Tim Corbin, I think, and I think that Tim Corbin's kind of come out and said that a little bit too as well.
Do you think he'll still be coaching third base, Jake?
I think he'll still roll his socks up, but I think he's. I will say this: they're one of the best teams to watch take BP because he does maximize every single second of it. And when I see them this year, I'm going to film it just because I don't know why I haven't filmed it. I talked about it on this podcast multiple times. It is like watching an artist like hit golf balls into something and then they turn it into like this great picture at the end. Like it is a marvel to watch Tim Corbin run a practice and run a BP session.
Yeah, he's one of the old guard, and we're going to see what happens this year with the new changing and everything, and the roster spots going down to 34 and everything changing this season. We're gonna find out a lot more about a lot of these guys. But Vanderbilt right here at number 8. Number 7, Georgia Bulldogs. Jake, this Georgia team and what Wes Johnson has done is tremendous, and he's bringing in a very good class. He brought in some transfers, like you said, they were really attacking during that during the College World Series time. This Georgia team could be as high as 1 in a lot of ranks, but we have them here at 7.
I think I'm the highest on this Georgia team too, as well. And like you mentioned, I mean, we saw it firsthand. Charlie Condon accepted an awards. Wes Johnson steps out to take a call with the recruit. He's always on the phone, always recruiting. My favorite one that they brought in is a little bit kind of an underrated one. I know D1 was very high on him, but Daniel Jackson coming over from Wofford, I think he's going to be their catcher. There's a ton of transfer guys, like you mentioned, and I'll let y'all kind of touch on them. They are replacing probably their best player in program history. But the flip side of that is I think that they were kind of at times hampered with him defensively. Like they had him in center, they had him at first, they had him at third, they couldn't DH him. I think now that they're gonna get better defensively, and I think that this is gonna be one of those situations where despite them losing their best player, they're gonna get better from an all-around talent standpoint as a lot of those guys have matured. But I think the sky is the limit for this. Another year of Wes Johnson, who's, in my opinion, going to be one of the best coaches in the SEC going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at guys that return like Slade Alford, Colby Branch. Trey Phelps could be an SEC Player of the Year candidate kind of guy. Like he has that ability, and I really like where he's moving. They bring in Nolan McCarthy from Kentucky, who was tremendous last year for them. Gives a little bit of pop. No, there's a lot to like about this Georgia team.
Yeah, you stole my thunder a little bit since Jake was picking a favorite transfer. I was going to say Nolan McCarthy from Kentucky is an incredible pickup from a team that went to Omaha, and who knows, maybe that's who Wes Johnson was on the phone with. But just counting off here, you got 5 guys that are in the top 87 according to 64 Analytics. This was a Georgia transfer class that began right when it opened. Georgia was racking them up. It was, there's another one for Georgia. Pretty unreal job by Wes Johnson. I picture it kind of like the Moneyball scene where they're talking about how do we replace Charlie Condon? Well, we replace him in the aggregate, and they got 100 guys that might add up to Charlie Condon.
Another Moneyball scene is there was a few SEC coaches that were in Omaha where it was like, damn, he committed to Georgia. This guy committed to Georgia. Like it was like Giambi going to the Yankees for some of those SEC teams.
Yeah, eventually somebody's going to call and get a staffer from Georgia and say, I just bought you.
I really like this Georgia team. I think Wes Johnson's done a tremendous job. A lot of pitching returning also. Leighton Finley, Colton Smith, and they're bringing in a great transfer that a lot of people haven't seen from USC, Eric Hammond. I think that this pitching staff might be more important than the offense was a year ago. We're going to see what this Georgia team does. But Wes Johnson, big pitching coach, we all know that. Now he feels like he's got some guys that are really going to produce for him. I'm excited to see what this Georgia team does here in this 2025 season. Number 6, Texas. This could go any direction. We know the head coach changes. We know all the controversy went on. They are returning a lot of talent, and they brought in some guys here. Noah, I'm going to let you touch on this first and just see where you go. But I am very excited for some of the players that this Texas team still has.
It'll be interesting. I know that as a Big 12 guy, it's kind of disingenuous to say, but it'll be interesting to see how they adjust to the Big 12. When you have Max Bellew winning the Big 12 Player of the Year, how does that carry over? You talk about
Max Bellew.
Whatever. We have got Thomas Burns coming in from Arizona State. That's an interesting transfer that I'm really excited about, Mark. I know that we were kind of on him earlier. Interesting freshman guys coming in. You see a lot of names when you scroll this roster that, oh yeah, I remember his brother. It'll be interesting to see how that new staff carries over. Max Weiner, of course, I would trust him with my arm at this point. I know that Jake really, really enjoys this Texas stuff. I think he said Nolan Cain was the best coach in the SEC, even though he's not a head coach. Jake, go ahead and fill me in on some gaps here with Texas.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of in a weird spot because Sauce has just been killing it on the recruiting trail coming in for the 2025 class and the 2024 class. He had a lot of guys flip. it was like a firestorm when he went over from A&M to Texas. It just seemed like every single day I get a text from somebody like, "Oh, Sloss is out at this place with the ex recruit. Oh, Sloss is out with this." I mean, they really attacked this. The big thing too is they kept a lot of the pieces. I know that you guys entered the portal that you thought were going to go elsewhere. Kimball Schuessler, I think, is another one. As he kind of has his Sloss reunion. He's a completely different player than the one that was at Texas A&M that Sloss kind of transferred out when he came in. I don't know the whole story there. I mean, Jim Schlossnagle is a talented SEC coach. I mean, he took, hopes and dreams and the power of friendship in 22 Texas A&M to the Final Four off of 2 pitchers. This is going to be a Texas team where I'm not sure how this one will be because this one feels like they have a lot of the Pierce guys that are kind of still there. But going forward, they're going to be a mainstay and a monster at the top of the SEC going forward. In 2025, 2026, I think they're going to be preseason top 3. I think that the monster that Sloss is building in Texas, a lot of SEC teams are going to raise the stakes a little bit because nobody spends money like Texas, and it's good to see kind of the buy-in to the baseball team again. There's a ton of excitement around this Texas baseball team.
I think a lot of people are missing. You got Will Gasparino coming back, Jalen Flores coming back. You got your top 2 pitchers in Max Grubbs and Ace Whitehead coming back. I don't see a ton of gaps here. And then they're bringing in freshman Bryce Navarre. They have talent to win right now in the SEC. I think that this team has the ability to win an SEC right now. Now, whether they can put it all together and be that team and Blue, if he can be an SEC Player of the Year kind of candidate like he was last year in the Big 12, we'll see. But this team has the ability to go out there and win the SEC. I'm a lot bigger on Texas this year. I didn't think I was going to be, and then I started breaking it down a few weeks ago. I'm like, man, I'm a lot bigger on Texas. Yes, Noah.
Shout out to Aiden Moffitt and Mendoza from Arizona State as well. Just big time transfer.
Yeah, huge trend. This class is terrific, and what he's brought in with the guys that remained, I'm big on this team. Let's move on to number 5, Florida. Now, this is a team that really struggled a year ago, and then all of a sudden they go on this run and they get all the way there, right? Like we all year were like, oh, give them a chance, and then they lose the midweek. Oh man, that's brutal. Then they go win a weekend series, like, okay, and then they go lose a weekend series, and they lose another midweek, and all of a sudden they're hovering around 500. They put it together. They lose a lot of guys, but they still have a lot of talent. Jake, I know that they brought in some guys, but let's talk about this Florida roster and why we have them here at the top 5.
Well, first off, it's just going to be me talking about this one. It kind of exits the screen. I mean, first off, they had a guy that that told the major leagues no. Like he was going to be a top 100 guy. He had his agent or somebody reach out to MLB teams. So I was like, hey, if he doesn't go in the top 50, don't bother taking us. Like Florida has a really enticing NIL package to kind of keep us here. The amount of talent they brought in, I think this is going to get back to basics a little bit for this Florida team going forward, which feels almost weird to say from a team that was so close in Omaha from winning the national championship. They return a ton of talent. They have a little bit of an edge to them this year. So I think everybody and their mom kind of loved to shit on them last year. I do know that a lot of them took that personally. And it's going to be an exciting. It's going to be a vintage Florida Gator team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, bringing in Blake Sear from Miami, they keep Colby Shelton, as you were talking about and alluding to. They're bringing in a freshman, Josh Whitnauer, who throws 97 miles an hour. I mean, what coach has done down there is tremendous. And Noah, this Florida team, I mean, I can't say that they're going to have all the superstars they had a year ago, but it seems like they just keep reloading and getting ready to make another Omaha run.
Yeah, and they really polish some things up. When you bring in Billy Barlow to solidify that rotation or maybe even your bullpen, that's a really fantastic piece that Kevin O'Sullivan brought in. I'm glad you mentioned Blake Sear, obviously a tremendous player at Miami. There was a lot of controversy with that transfer in Omaha that I think Tony Vitello said something like, if you come here and you want something that's not going to happen, and then he ended up at Florida. So there's going to be some juice when he takes the field in the SEC. A lot of things to be excited about. This Florida team, they had that benefit of where when you struggle and then you have a lot of new young guys get opportunities to get experience and really polish themselves up. We saw that not only in the postseason, but now when you have guys like Jack Caglione to replace, we're going to see that on display. it's hard to doubt Kevin O'Sullivan, and you started to get a little bit of that for a brief time there, and I think he's kind of smoothed in those worries.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many names that you recognize off their fall ball roster: Ty Evans, Cade Curlin, Luke McNeely, Luke Heyman behind the plate. I mean, they're going to be like Noah kind of alluded to. They're going to be pissed off. They have a ton of SEC experience. They play in just a gorgeous, gorgeous ballpark down there in Gainesville that the fans always fill out. This is going to be the coming out party, I think, for Florida.
People forget that I picked Cade Curlin to win SEC Player of the Year last year, and
yes, you did.
I came up just short, just a few hundred players short.
Yeah. Listen,
you give me your bounce back though for this year.
Yeah, I'm
Kevin
locking in this year.
O'Sullivan is a tremendous coach, and he proves it year in, year out. And last year was one of those where it was just a masterpiece with disaster, right? Like we were like, man, this team could miss the tournament with all this talent, and then he puts it together and they get all the way there, and just put on a performance there in the College World Series. But honestly, I think that this Florida team, the ceiling is so high in what they have in the talent-wise, and if they can get enough from their starting pitching, I know losing guys losing guys like Cade Fisher really hurts, but I really think that this Florida team has a lot of the talent moving forward. Number 4, LSU. This is a team that some people have as high as 1, yours truly. But Noah, we have them at number 4 in our rankings, and let us know a little bit more about this team.
Well, this LSU team, we think last year, where it was, oh yeah, well they're going to repeat as national champions, according to a lot of LSU fans. And Mark and I, you and I stood up against them. I don't know where Jake was during all that, but we stood and said, no, you're not. But
Mark had him missing the tournament, I believe.
So did I.
And I had them losing in the first round.
And that almost happened. They had to get hot at the right time, and they did. Very similar to Florida, but they fizzled out in Chapel Hill. But when we said that, Mark, we said, not this year, but next year. Mm-hmm. And next year has arrived. In fact, this is a loaded team, and we weren't even thinking about guys like Stephen Milam, who had a unbelievable monster Milam.
And they had so many people leave. Like, that's the part that's crazy, is there were so many people in that 2023 class who were like, okay, when they get up, and then they all left, and they all kind of, fizzled out there. And that's kind of the story for them this year again, is we're going to talk about them being really good in 2026.
No, they're good this year. I disagree with you 100%. Noah, continue with what you were saying.
Yes, I will. Josh Pearson is back. Michael Braswell, say what you want about him, is back. Gavin Guidry, they're talking about maybe being a starter. Chris Stanfield coming in from Auburn. He was one of my favorite players to watch in Auburn last year. Chase Shores is going to be a player that they're going to be asking to kind of take that next step. There's just so many names that we've heard about for so long that are now being asked to take that next step in that LSU program. And Jay Johnson has quite the track record to prove that he's capable of that. Grant Fontenot coming in from Texas as well. And then Anthony Ianson, kind of the jewel of that transfer portal class. How will this rotation kind of form itself? That's going to be the key for LSU's success, because I think when you have a guy like Jared Jones, they're going to be able to hit the ball.
Is Chase Shores throwing? I know that he had the injury, but is he throwing?
Who?
I saw somewhere that he was doing something.
Chase Shores.
Yeah, he's throwing. I don't know if it's full bullpens, but he's throwing again. But here's the key. You nailed it, Noah. Anthony Ianson, people around the country were like, oh, this is a weird one to go get from UC, San Diego. Then you look at him, and the dude is a bona fide stud. He's going to be the front-end starter there for them, and they have so much pitching talent, and you mix that in with the guys that they already had on the offensive side. Jake, I know that you're further down on them than both Noah and I are this year, but give us your thoughts on this LSU squad.
I would like to clarify. I think when you look at the aggregate of our rankings, there's 4 teams that really, really stand out. I have LSU kind of as the last of those teams, but I think that all of those teams are going to be really, really elite. I mean, Grant Fontenot is another guy where you think if he can kind of turn the corner. I know that he showed glimpses of it at Texas. Cade, I know I'm going to butcher his name, and I've had it said to me multiple times. Arami from Tomball, he kind of turned on the draft too. He's going to be a guy where I think that they use him at kind of a corner infield spot. He's going to be one of those guys of the future. They get Jared Jones back. They're going to hit the ball. They're going to pitch better than they did last year. They're going to be an elite team. It just feels like the kind of 1 year away still from being where Texas A&M, Tennessee, those teams kind of are. Which, I mean, look at another year, Stephen Milam. Do you get the Stephen Milam that you saw at the beginning of the year? Do you get the one that kind of took his lumps in SEC play and then got hot at the end? Which one do we see from him? I know that there were a few LSU fans that were like, please stop calling him Monster. Like, he's not worthy of that nickname right now. But he ended up being a monster in the postseason. It'll be interesting to see how they use Guidry. Guidry was, if you remember, that closer in that freshman role who honestly like really didn't give a shit. And that was kind of his best thing, was the moment was never too big for him. Complete 180 last year, is it felt like when he kind of got in, his curveball wasn't always on. It always seemed like he had one pitch that wasn't on. If he can kind of transition and take that step forward and work into a starter role, I mean, he has the stuff to be like an all-SEC pitcher. He has the stuff to be a first-rounder going forward. Can he put it all together? I think LSU has the talent to. And again, trust Jay. That's what the LSU fans told us last year. We were dogging on him. You can always trust Jay.
Well, that's the crazy thing, right? A lot of us, when Guidry was coming in, he was such a highly recruited guy. We thought he was going to be a starting shortstop in this season. Like, we thought, okay, sophomore, junior season, he turns into that shortstop guy. Now he's full pitcher mode. I really like what this LSU team is doing going forward, and trust Jay. As much as I was dogging on them last year, and they proved me fairly right, I do believe that this LSU team is a team that can make some big noise and is Omaha bound. I really believe that this team gets there again. All right, home field apparel. If you guys have not bought and put on any of this stuff, it is some of the softest team gear on the planet, and it's really cool stuff. They have some old school stuff. They have some new stuff. Go take a look. Home field apparel. Use our code CBC15. You get 15% off your first order. It's terrific stuff. You're really going to like it. Go out, go get some T-shirts, get some hoodies, get all of their gear. They have tons of cool stuff there, and they're always coming out with new stuff. Never boring. They come out with a lot of stuff, and they have a big old school feel there. I really like the home field apparel stuff, and it's really, really soft and really comfortable to wear. Get it before the season starts here. Buy some stuff for your Christmas folks. CBC15, get 15% off your first order with home field apparel. Number 3, Tennessee. Jake, Tennessee wins the national championship. We get to go down there. We get to watch them. We get to see them in person. We get to talk to Coach V. We get to talk to all these players. A lot of those players are gone, right? They went on. They moved on. What are we going to do here with this Tennessee squad moving forward? I really like them this year, and obviously we have them in our top 3.
Yeah, I mean, it really was kind of a cultivation of everything Tony Vitello had built over the course of 5 years. Nobody won more games in the SEC than Tennessee the last 3 years. They lose a ton of those guys. A lot of people I heard around Knoxville said that was the best college baseball team in history, and they kind of are worthy of being in that conversation with just some of the talent that was on that team. Obviously, there's a few guys that are still kind of coming around from it, but Tony Vitello really hit the portal hard. He was another guy that was recruiting while he was in Omaha. Gavin, I think it's Keelan, is coming over from Louisville. You can go ahead and write in Sharpie that he'll be their shortstop. Cannon Peebles, I think, is one of my favorite guys, too. I know that he really struggled at Tennessee. This last year, I know a lot of NC State fans were kind of laughing at him as he didn't really play a lot of meaningful innings. He accepted that role. It was a very mature thing when you were watching him in Omaha. It seemed like he was always kind of the first guy out of the dugout. There was ever a pitcher that needed to be warmed up. I think it's going to be his moment in Knoxville. I think it's one that he's earned. I think he's matured a lot as a hitter and as a baseball player. And I really do think it's going to be a coming out party for him this year.
I literally have him circled and said, Cannon Peebles finally putting it together this year in Tennessee. And listen, I think Gavin Keelan coming from Louisville is one of the best transfers in this entire class. But they also got Andrew Fisher from Ole Miss, who's a guy who could hit 30 home runs this year. And they still have Dean Curley, who was a stud shortstop as a freshman last year. Yeah, I don't think Keelan necessarily is going to be that guy that they're going to say, hey, here's the keys, you're the shortstop. He might have to earn that position over Curley, and Curley might move to third base. They've talked about, and they're trying to figure out where to put Andrew Fisher. But I really like what this team has. Noah, we got to sit down with this team a lot. And if A.J. Russell can also get healthy, my goodness, this team is just poised for another run in Omaha.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how Hunter Ensley does in a leadership role. We saw him kind of take on the role of emotional guy when he collides into the wall, which just happened to be at the right place at the right time. But after that, he really embraced it and was, look at me, I'm the big tough guy. And that's exactly what we've seen Tennessee kind of become the last few years and what they've established. Dalton Bargo, and a player that I'm excited to see take the next step. But a player that I really, really want to see, like if you tell me he's pitching, I'm turning it on. Marcus Phillips. He came in during the College World Series. I believe he only threw an inning, but it was 100 miles an hour. It was like, who on earth is this guy? Number 44 last year, I believe, out of Iowa Western. This is going to be a big year for him in terms of, is he a professional or is he not? Massive pitcher. If he's good, I'm all in on Tennessee because I think that he can be a total X factor out of that bullpen. But he's just kind of almost a gamble guy. And then you talk about the transfers they bring in, obviously Gavin, and we'll guess on that last name, I guess Jake, and then Liam Doyle from Ole Miss, along with Andrew Fisher. Great time to be a volunteer. I think we're a little bit high on them. I always worry about the championship hangover because we've seen it so many years in a row now. But I think that they're in a better position than LSU was last year. Obviously better than Ole Miss, but less than LSU last year.
I think everybody was in a better position than Ole Miss.
I believe in Tony V, man. I believe that he gets the passion out of these guys, and I think that he's got the right guys in there, and they're doing it the right way. And we listened to him talk about the transfer portal, and he went out and got the guys that he wanted. He didn't necessarily go and say, I'm going to go get the best, the highest ranking guys all over the country. I'm going to get the guys that I want to be here at Tennessee. It feels like a blue-collar program built on this just blue chip. Like, it's unbelievable the amount of work that this team puts in. I'm very excited for this Tennessee team. Them and LSU are two. I had them 1-2, so I'm very excited for these two squads moving forward. But
I love
go ahead
that Tony V has them as this like underdog. Everybody hates us when they're probably like they're all highly recruited guys that come in. Like I don't know what he tells them. But, I mean, we saw it in Omaha. They have, like, an edge to them every single time. Like,
I love
it's not an arrogance of, like, hey, we know we got this. It's like a screw you for doubting me type of thing. And nobody doubted them last year.
It's Kirby Smart. Yeah, he's like, everybody doubted us. Yeah. What?
Yeah. He gets the most out of his guys. Like, those guys believe it. They get out there and they work their tails off, and they play hard all the time for him. I love what I see from him. But
at the same time with that narrative, 2 years ago in Omaha, he told us, don't rank us number one ever again. Like, okay. And then he wins the national championship. Well, our hands are tied.
Some of us said that the number one seed was going to win the national championship this year. Myself and AJ did pick that last year, and that was 100% correct because Tennessee became the number one team and won the national championship. So he might have to just live with the fact that they might be a number one team at some point and just buy into the fact that they can win it as a number one team. But I love what they're at. I love this Tennessee team, and I think that they have a lot of talent going forward. It is going to be some proving ground. Early. But if some of these transfers and these guys can mat out, I mean, it's a very good team. Number 2, Arkansas. This is a team that we really want to see take that step and get back to Omaha. And they've just stumbled the last couple seasons in postseason play. They have a lot of guys. They have a ton of talent. Noah, I'm going to let you start with this team.
Yeah, it starts on the mound. I think Zach Root is probably, I don't want to say underrated because we all know who he is out of East Carolina coming into Arkansas, but you almost forget that Zach Root ended up at Arkansas, and I think you're going to remember really quickly when he might compete for SEC Pitcher of the Year. They had this fall deal against against Oklahoma State. Naturally, it was a sellout in Fayetteville, but game 1, let me get this number right. They struck out 18 Oklahoma State batters. This is fall ball, so a lot of guys come in and throw an inning or two. It wasn't Hagen Smith going out there for 8 innings. Last year against Oregon State, Mark, but. Gabe, and I always jack up his last name. Jake is
Gackle.
Gabe Gackle coming in, 3 Ks. Zach Root, 4 Ks. Gage Wood, 4 Ks. Landon, another crazy last name, Bida Shelley's, 2 Ks. Cole Gilbert, 2 Ks. Yeah, right. Carson Wiggins, 1 K. Christian Fouch, 2 Ks. Carson Wiggins, another legacy tour guy. Can't believe he's still in college, but that's actually a different last name. So,
no, his brother played at Arkansas, though, so you will recognize his last name.
But this Arkansas team is not just pitching, whereas we've seen it be pitching in the past. They bring a lot of guys back. They bring back the Michael Francis nickname for some of their favorite hitters there. A freshman that I want to look out for in that Arkansas possible lineup would be Brenton Clark. He's had a really strong fall for them. I think he almost hit for the cycle in one of the scrimmages they had there, and he's hit like 2 home runs every game, feels like. I really like this Arkansas team, and I think that they are I don't want to say it's this year or never for Dave Van Horn, but strictly age-wise, this is the year for Arkansas.
This team has a ton of talent. We didn't even touch on Wahiwa Eloy. We didn't touch on TCU transfer Logan Maxwell. Cam Koziel transfer from Vandy. Can Kendall Diggs be healthy? They got Aiden Jimenez from Oregon State, who was a tremendous talent there against LSU in that regional. And he had Tommy John surgery last offseason. They have so much talent for this team. Jake, I know that you're high on this Arkansas team. I think we all have them in the top 4. This is a very, very good team, and this team really needs to produce in the offseason, but in the postseason. But they really need to get started hot again.
Yeah, I thought you were going to talk about your Aussie. They're going to start an Australian third baseman. His name is eluding me right now as I don't have my notes in front of me, but 2-time JUCO All-American. Really, really tremendous swing when you watch him hit. I just did the deep dive on Arkansas on Wednesday for Southern Fried Baseball. So if we're not talking enough about Arkansas Hog fans, just go ahead and watch that. I have Arkansas as my preseason number 1. I have them at number 1 in the SEC. The pitching that they bring back, I think, is going to be better than the 2024 team that they have in 2025. Like you said, Gackel is going to be a Friday night guy. He's up to 98. Zach Root's a change of pace guy. Will McIntyre is another kind of change of pace guy out of the bullpen. Wiggins is consistently around 100. I was talking to a coach at Oklahoma State, and he was like, yeah, he's like, we're a good hitting team. They're just better right now. And we kind of needed to humble our guys a little bit. Oklahoma State's probably going to lead the Big 12 in hitting, for reference, on that stat that Noah pulled.
Where the talent level actually is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look up at it. It's like 1 inning, 3 Ks, 15 pitches. 1 inning, 3 Ks, 12 pitches. Like they were attacking the zone, and then the hitting's got to be better for him this year. And I think Dave Van Horn addressed that. Ryder Helfrich led the Cape Cod in home runs at 11 in a 6-week span. Camden Kozel and Nolan Souza are going to be battling out for second base. They're likely going over to first. And then, they hit so good with the Eloy transfer. Why not go get his brother? He's probably going to be their DH. There is a ton of stuff to like for this Arkansas team going forward. And I would be shocked. Well, I guess they've run out of Big 12, so they're not going to get bounced from a new Big 12 purple team. I'd be shocked if they don't end up in Omaha.
Yeah, it would really be a tremendous blow if they somehow don't do well this postseason. I feel like this team maybe has a little bit less of that weighing on them, where they have guys that are such first-round talent, maybe early in the draft guys. Maybe they put this thing together and they're a little bit more of a work every day kind of guys. But Dave Van Horn has really been stable for this Arkansas team, and I think that this is an Omaha caliber club. Number 1, Texas A&M. We know what they did last year. They're a different team this year. I am not as high on this team as a lot of our constituents are, but they do return a ton of talent, Jake.
I do want to clarify that they actually didn't lose a single non-SEC team the entire year. So they went undefeated in non-conference play, and all of their losses were to SEC teams, as Tennessee kind of was their downfall there, and Florida beat them too. I mean, they really hit the portal hard, and they hit the portal hard to, keep their own guys. It's going to be – all joking aside, they spent a pretty penny to make sure some of these guys didn't leave. Caden Sorrell, Jace Lavalette, Gavin Grohovic. Gavin Grohovic is kind of battling a little bit of an injury, so he has been a little bit under the radar. I haven't heard him talked about. I mean, this is a guy that's probably going to go 1-1 in 2026. Caden Sorrell, I had a scout say that you have all the guys that A&M's had in the outfield. He's the one that I think is the most exciting about. He's added about 10 pounds of muscle, in my opinion. I don't have the exact number on it, but he's now putting the ball 10, 15, 20 feet over where he was doing it last year. They bring in Gavin Cash, which is just – it feels like a reunion with me, Noah's. I was talking about Cash being my favorite player back in 2022. Now he's on Texas A&M. Blake Binderup, he's another guy that you can kind of watch out for. He was just dropping bombs early on in the season, and then when SEC rolled around, he kind of just pissed down his leg. That's going to be another thing to kind of track going forward, is I think he is the strongest guy. I think that was what their pitching coach when he came in. They're watching him warm up and everything. He goes, "Who the hell is that guy?" And they're like, "Oh, that's Bender." And they're like, "He's just like an athletic freak." There's a ton of stuff to like, and I'll save some of the other A&M stuff. But I mean, you could talk for hours about the talent this A&M hitting is this year. They have about 12 or 15 guys that would start for other SEC teams.
They can hit. I'm not doubting what they're going to be able to do offensively, Jake. What I'm doubting is the consistency and what they can do on the pitching side. Noah, I know that we're high on this A&M team. I'm less high than some people are, but the majority of the votes were to put this team number one, obviously. And there's good reasons, right? They're very good, but they do have new staff. They have a new pitching staff. They have a new coaching staff. It's going to be interesting to see this team moving forward. What do you think on this A&M squad, Noah?
Well, Ryan Prager's back to possibly relieve some of those nerves. Obviously, we've seen the good and bad side of Ryan Prager. Really outstanding last year. Your boy Grant Cunningham coming in from Washington to kind of relieve those stress as well. We had the same concerns with A&M last year. We knew that they were probably going to be able to hit the ball. Of course, we didn't know about how great Grant Kohovic and Caden Sorrell would end up being. But we weren't really worried about offensively. We were worried about on the mound. And Max Weiner ended up being, who he is. And now, unfortunately, he is at Texas. But a legacy stays for at least a little bit when you have some carryover on that coaching staff. But outside of that, I completely understand those reservations, Mark. But I do think that Texas A&M right now, if the season ended right now, they would be in Omaha. Obviously, they haven't played a game. But strictly based off of top 8 rosters, I think that they're there. Obviously, Jake's our A&M guy, but the question will come down to, do we get 2024 Ryan Prager, or do we get some other sides of Ryan Prager?
I mean, he there's a lot of scouts that didn't like his stuff. So that is a very real thing about him kind of regressing. But at the same time, he went toe to toe with Hagen Smith and seemed to kind of win the game. So it's going to be, which Ryan Prager do you get? Do you get the theoretical Ryan Prager that turned scouts away, or do you get the Ryan Prager from 2024 that dominated the SEC?
Only time will tell, but we're excited. So there's our top 16, folks. We'll release this also so you guys can take a look at it. But that's our 16. This is our collective ranking between the talking heads, as you will, of the College Baseball Central Network here. We love breaking these teams down. We're going to do this for every conference. So now we're going to go through some of the fun things, the postseason awards, where we think some of these guys are going to be, where we think how many teams will get to Omaha, who our dark horse picks are. Yes, Jake, you have to pick a team that is not in the top 6. You can't take top 6 teams and say, oh, they're the dark horse. No, Jake, they're very good. Not that all these SEC teams are not very good, but I'm very good here. Let's see here. The first thing we're going to talk about, Coach of the Year. Now, I'm gonna let Noah go first here. Noah, who do you think is going to be the Coach of the Year?
Well, when I think Coach of the Year, I think that you have to sort of realize the difference between what we expect versus what they do. So I think we expect Dave Van Horn to have a really, really good team. So I would normally pick him because I think that Arkansas is going to win the conference. But when I think performing against expectations, I'm going to go with Wes Johnson. When you bring in this transfer class, replacing Charlie Condon is going to be kind of a narrative for this team. And if they're able to do that, then I think that Wes Johnson is going to be not only SEC Coach of the Year, but potentially National Coach of the Year if he's able to use this class the way that he wants to. And it's got to be rewarded when you recruit like that. It's not just all right, let's see what happens. He recruited very well, so I would say if we're tallying up the points, he might even have a lead for this award right now.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I get that. I mean, I don't think you're going to go wrong there by taking Wes, and especially if this Georgia team performs. Jake, where are you?
I'm going to get Micah Early from Texas A&M. First-year coach. Expectations are going to be sky high. But I think that the voting in the SEC is going to take into account the situation that he was kind of dropped into, of keeping the players together, of having all of these expectations. And I think he's one that you could see being the SEC Coach of the Year.
I can buy into that. I can understand where the thought process comes from. I'm going to go kind of with what Noah was saying, where he thinks Arkansas is going to win it. I think LSU is going to win it, so I'm going to take Jay Johnson to win my Coach of the Year. I was really on the razor's edge here of taking Skip Johnson, because here's the thing: if that Oklahoma team can perform in the SEC, he could win this award as well. But I'm going to go with Jay. I think that Jay ends up winning. I think LSU has a terrific season. I think that put it all together, trust in Jay, and I think that this is the way that it goes this year. I think that he wins the Coach of the Year. Newcomer of the year. So this is a person that's either a freshman or transferring in from another conference, not an SEC player last year. Jake, who's your newcomer of the year?
Noah, you had a question?
I did have a question, and it's probably good I ask before Jake says it. Mark, are we counting Texas and Oklahoma players as newcomers?
Yes. Yeah, I'll allow it. You can have Texas and Oklahoma players as newcomers. I went a
That
different
feels like
route.
cheating.
Yeah, that does feel like cheating.
Like if they were already on the roster, it kind of feels like it, but I will allow it because
Well,
they are.
the question isn't are you allowing it? The question is are the SEC voters allowing it?
I think that they are. I think that because they're all.
So Max Ballou is going to be considered like a newcomer?
He could be considered a newcomer of the year. Yeah.
No, I'll let you go first since you obviously
Okay, switching.
this guy in mind.
I did think of that Texas Oklahoma caveat, but I'm not going to go with that. I know Jake probably will, but I'm going to go with Zach Root at Arkansas. I think that I just alluded he might compete for SEC Pitcher of the Year, so it'd be kind of silly of me to not pick him to compete for newcomer at the same time.
I get that. I fully understand that. Jake, where are you at?
I'm going to go Jamal George at Texas A&M. He's kind of a little bit of an under the radar guy. Almost kind of reminds me of the Hayden Schott, where he's a big vibes guy. Super, super athletic, super, super fast. They might play him at second. They might play him in the outfield as A&M is kind of working through where to put him. But he's going to be one that I think A&M is going to lean on him a ton at the top of that order. And people in the SEC are going to be very impressed by Jamal George coming over.
I get two. I'm going to go with the freshman and a transfer. My freshman is Brody Johnson of Vandy. I really think that he's going to be this tremendous player that we see. I think he's the next breakout freshman in the SEC. I think he's the guy there for this Vandy lineup. I could see him hitting anywhere to 3, 4, 5, and he could be a guy that hits 10 to 15 home runs, if not more. I really like what Brody Johnson is doing there. My other one is Gavin McGillen, right? I think that he could be a huge piece. Somebody's mic is off. Whose is that? Can you hear that?
Was that my mic?
I don't know. Anyway, Jeff Dillon moving forward here for Louisville. I really think he was at Louisville. Now he's at Tennessee. I really think that he could be the guy. Who's the breakout candidate here, folks? Who's the guy that is going to be an SEC player last year that all of a sudden moves on now and it just huge jump forward there and becomes the guy in what we hope will be for an SEC team here? Jake, why don't you go ahead and start us here?
Mark, that's actually your mic, by the way.
It's my mic?
This one feels like cheating a little bit. I'm going to go Ryder Helfrich out of Arkansas as he hit under 200. So I think he qualifies for this criteria of struggling in SEC play. He went up to the Cape and just completely dominated it. Down the stretch in SEC play, he hit a lot better, had a lot of stats. So Ryder Helfrich's, I think, the guy that's going to break out this year.
Gotcha. Let's see. I don't even have my mic connected now, so it's not my mic. Anyway, breakout candidate here for you, Noah.
I'm going to go with Max. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go with Cannon Peoples. We already touched with it on the show. I was worried that Jake was going to pick him, even though he kind of already did. He's cheating. He's getting multiple players. But Cannon, outstanding player at NC State. Struggled, but then later accepted his role, as Jake said, at Tennessee, and now he's going to be asked to be that player again that he was at NC State. And if he's even like 3/4 of that, then he's going to be in contention for that award.
He was on my short list as well. I'm going to go with Will Furniss from Ole Miss. I think that he has just been a little bit underperforming where he could be. This is a guy that could hit 300 and could hit 20-plus bombs. I think that he could be a stud for Ole Miss, and I think that he's just been slightly missing out every single season. This is the year Will Furniss turns it around. I don't think it helps Ole Miss enough. Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead. I just want you to bookmark that. Come back to me. Come back to me.
Okay. I'm done. That's all. I just think Will Furniss is going to be the guy. But yeah, what?
Well, you reminded me. I want to go back to not breakout, but what do you call it? A newcomer. I'm going to go with. I just want to shout out Owen Pano at Ole Miss. Outstanding recruit out of high school. I know Jake says they don't recruit anymore, but they did with him.
Fair enough.
It's still Ole Miss.
Pitcher of the year, fellas. This is a big award every year in the SEC. There's been some studs, and they usually go in the first round. Where do you think we go for pitcher of the year, Jake? Why don't you start us up?
Gabe Gackel at Arkansas. Everything. They're moving him into that starter role. He's going to be an elite starting pitcher. He's going to be the Friday night guy on the best staff in the country. Gabe Gackel.
I like it. I mean, that's the thing. He's got what? He's throwing 98 miles an hour, and he's going to
be the 98 with a slider, like a schemes-esque slider.
Yeah, it's going to be filthy, especially if he can end up going 5, 6, 7, 8 innings. Man, that's tough. Noah?
I want to go so many different options. I want to go with the Witherspoon twins. I want to go crazy with Hunter Elliott, but I'm going to go with Andrew Fisher at Tennessee. Welcome to the program. Turning a new leaf. We're post-national champions, and they're going to break the curse of being bad.
I am going with the guy that I could have put as my newcomer of the year because I could have. He's coming from UC San Diego, Anthony Ayenson. I think that he could be the key for LSU being that kind of team that gets back to Omaha and really dominates the LSU and dominates the SEC this year. Anthony Ayenson, I've seen him grow for UC San Diego. The guy has all the talent in the world. I hope it translates. I really do. I think that he could be there. I just didn't want to put him down for 2 awards, but I'm taking him as my pitcher of the year in the SEC. Player of the year. Noah, you got to start us off here.
Well, I'm going to go with the real stretch here, Jason Laviolette at Texas A&M. I wanted to go Grahovic, but I can't pick the understudy on the number 1 team. I can't do it.
I like that. Jake, where are you going with your player of the year?
I want to do a 2-parter here because it always seems like it's the player on the team that wins it. So if it was just the pure best player in the SEC, Ike Irish. But the player of the year candidate, I think to take Caden Terrell from Texas A&M.
You picked the understudy's understudy.
All right. This is where I'm going. I believe that there's 2 guys that could win this award also, Jake. But I think Mississippi State doesn't get there. I think Hunter Hines could be that kind of candidate that could win it, but I don't think Mississippi State has a good enough season for him to win Player of the Year. I'm going Jared Jones. Bear Jones, I think, is going to have 30-plus home runs. I think he could hit 330 this year. And if LSU ends up winning the SEC, there's no reason why he shouldn't be given this award. I feel like he's been kind of, I don't know if people just undervalue the guy, but he hit 28 home runs last year, and not enough people spoke about him. I really like where he's at. Kavares Terrace. Yeah, I mean, player of the year, Tennessee. I don't hate that. Omaha teams. Noah, how many from the SEC are making it? I know that we've always been all over the board on this one, but we've been pretty correct the last few years with saying 4 or 5. Where are you at with Omaha teams this year?
Never been 5, Mark, so ditch that narrative.
I'm just saying, we've been close.
I'm going to go with 3. Feels like the right number after 4 last year. I don't really want to guess who they are. I don't know if you're going to make me do that. No. But 3 feels like the right number.
3 is my answer as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and go that before I get to Jake. Jake, where are you going?
3
as well.
It's going to be.
The board, it's 3.
It's going to be either A&M or Arkansas, and then and then 1 from the Tennessee, Florida, LSU.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of teams that could get there, but I think it's 3 as well. I do believe it's 3. Okay, dark horse, Jake. Let's make sure we get this correct. It's teams ranked 7 through 16 that you believe can win the regular season in the SEC. Go ahead.
Boomer Sooner, baby. OU. I think OU could be the dark horse if you're going to make me pick one of those bottom feeders down there.
That's a good one.
They are they out Kentucky, and Kentucky did really good last year. So
I like chaos. I like it. Noah, who's your dark horse?
I'm going to go Auburn. We touched on why they can do it. They have all these nice pieces. Jake just said that Ike Irish might win SEC Player of the Year, so I would be fool to not bet with him.
I'm going Georgia in the fact that West brought in 14 transfers and 13 freshmen, and he's got a bunch of guys that he thinks are going to fill this need, and they have returning pitching coming back. 5 of their 7 returners come back from the pitching side for their most innings. I really like what this team's done. I do believe that Trey Phelps could be a guy that's in that SEC candidate of the year for player of the year. So I'm going to go Georgia. It could be the team that shocks us all, and Wes Johnson gets that team to be the number 1 team in the SEC. But I don't think that they win the SEC. Let me be very clear. This is my dark horse. So, Noah, who wins the SEC? I think you already alluded to it, but why don't you go ahead and let us have it?
Yeah, Death, Texas, Arkansas at home. That statement's kind of losing some luster, but I'm still going to ride with Arkansas at home. Gabe locking down Friday nights. It's going to be shades of Hagen Smith. Lot of top dogs in the SEC to compete with, but I'm going to ride with Arkansas to win it all, so I might as well pick them to win it early and often.
Absolutely. I fully understand that. Riding with DVH is never a bad thing in any season for the SEC. Jake, who's your SEC winner?
I'm going to go Texas because it feels like DVH doesn't really care about winning the SEC, and Sloss kind of does. That's one of their goals. I'm going to go Texas winning the SEC.
I like that. I like where your head's at. I've been very public saying it this year, and as public as I was against this team a year ago, I was very public saying that this team is going to win it this year, and I'm going LSU. I'm going as a man of my word, saying that I believe that this LSU squad is there. I've said a lot of these guys that have gone in and are going to win some of these postseason awards. I believe Jay Johnson has the right squad, and I think LSU is the team moving forward. I think that they just go ahead and dominate in SEC play this year, and I think that this could be a 60-win ball club. They're that good. Pretty excited for this LSU's team this year. All right, fellas, we're near the end of the show here. Anything you want to add into the SEC? We're really excited. I mean, we went hour and a half here talking about SEC, and we could have gone 3-4 hours. Jake, you got any last thoughts here for the SEC?
Just Southern Fried Baseball deep dives. If this wasn't enough SEC content, if you want to see me rant for 30 minutes about every single team, the schedule will be in alphabetical order. So next up is Auburn. So the Texas schools that follow me a little bit closer, those will be near the end, but are excited to kind of do a deep dive into Auburn.
Yes, go check out Southern Fried Baseball. Very excited for that. It's been a great series so far, and we're going through. We're talking to head coaches again. We're talking to assistant coaches. We're talking to players. But Jake doing that show is just all discussing your team every single week, going through and breaking down each one of these teams there. Are you doing 2 a week, Jake?
Just one right now. We'll put up on Thanksgiving and Christmas because Christmas is on a Wednesday, so I will not be going to Southern Fried Baseball on Christmas.
Fair enough. Noah, any last thoughts here for SEC ball?
Nothing too crazy. Obviously, the nation's best conference. Interesting that we started with them. Mark, you made us get hot right away. Normally we'd start with some other conferences just to get loose, but you threw us into the fire, and I think I'm ready to go watch some. I really want to watch LSU play Arkansas right now.
I know that we have to wait all the way until February 14th. It is not Valentine's Day. It's the opening of college baseball season this year. I cannot wait. I honestly am so excited for this. Again, go check out all of our content. We thank all of you fans for coming and joining us live. Go watch the replay of this here. We're going to put out some clips also this week. Very excited this year for what we're doing here at College Baseball Central. We got lots of cool things going on. A big team this year covering any team that's in D1. We basically got you covered. We're going out there. We're covering a lot of baseball this year. Very excited. Doing a lot of deep dives. And like I said, doing head coach interviews, doing player interviews, doing assistant coach interviews. We've got you covered. If you guys ever have questions, please feel free to reach out to us on X, or you can reach out to the main account there at College Baseball Central. Thanks again for joining us on the Weekend Rotation. We'll be seeing you in 2 weeks where we're going to do the deep dive on the ACC. So thanks again for joining us. I'm Mark Garland, Noah Darling, and Jake McKeever. We all thank you for coming on. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks for the next